Hello, my name is Jorb. I love gear, and it's finally NAMM season. That special time of year where all sorts of music tech companies come together in beautiful and expensive Anaheim, California to announce all the new products they've been working on. I haven't been since January of 2019. That was one of the truly most exhausting sensory experiences of my entire life. It was so loud. And I love gear so much. I did think about going this year. I priced it out. It would have been more expensive for me to fly and stay in Anaheim than it is for me to fly and stay in Berlin for Superbooth. And I said, you know what? I don't need to do 2 of these a year. Even though I love seeing all the people and seeing all the new stuff, I'll be fine if I just do Superbooth. And a lot of synth companies wait for that anyway. But that doesn't mean there aren't a lot of exciting things for me getting announced at NAMM. I mostly care about synthesizers, so that's most of what we're going to talk about, even if synth companies a lot of the time do seem to wait for Superbooth. So instead, for NAMM coverage, you get this. The dust has settled. I've thought about these things. Plenty of other people have put out their opinions. But I'm going to provide some commentary and some insight on some of the stuff that excited me the most from this year's NAMM. I get most of my news on hardware from Synth Anatomy, and Sonic State is like the best for convention coverage. They will talk to everybody. So I will link to both of them below. They're where I heard about a lot of these things first. But if you want any more details on the specific stuff, there'll be all sorts of links right next to links to support me, affiliates, and the like. Okay, why don't we start first? Something that really surprised me. Stylophone put out 2 new things. One is this like little theremin. I don't know exactly what they're thinking or who it's for. It fills a similar spot to the stuff they already sell, the stylophones they already sell. It's kind of a toy. Sure, it's been in some amazing recordings, but it's pretty much a little gizmo, something to play with, like the Korg Monotron. But if I scroll down a little bit, look at that. They're also putting out, apparently I can't click on to look at. They're also putting out this drone synthesizer, the DS2. Each drone voice is an oscillator and a filter. There's no keyboard, obviously, and there's this one like multi-output related rate, Ultra LFO, they call it. There's a built-in reverb, there's a built-in delay, URAC patchable, URAC mountable, and it's all just $250. That's very, very good from that perspective. I think it's Curtis chip filters, but what do you think 2 oscillators and 2 filters cost in URAC? It's more than $250. And you have this LFO, and you have these built-in effects. So it's semi-modular from a different goal than a lot of the other little boxes I've tried or seen lately. You know what I mean? Explicitly being a drone synth is really cool from the start. Plus, if you use this to jumpstart a little URAC setup, or if it's about having a drone setup anyway, I think that's super, super cool. I think that's super, super cool and kind of surprising and exciting because of that, because it's kind of surprising. Awesome, exciting. Next up, I heard this is a rumor, and I thought it was fake a while ago, that Suzuki was working on a new Omnichord, and it turns out that they were. This is the OM-108. It looks like the OM-84, which is the one I demoed earlier this year, and one that probably most people associate with, the Omnichord. They think of that one. This new reissue has analog voices modeled after the OM-84, which is cool, and also some sampled digital voices as well. You can break out control of the rhythm section. There's multiple channels of MIDI out. Everything someone probably would ask for in a modern Omnichord is here. But it costs $800. I personally think that is too much for the people who see the Omnichord as this weird, quirky old thing. Those people have been priced out of it. The Adventure Time people have been priced out of it almost entirely. They're still going to be looking for old ones at thrift stores. And anybody who is really, really interested in using the Omnichord as a way to control MIDI, or they like, the sort of later digital voices, then it's still more expensive than the still available as brand new Suzuki Q-Chord. So to me, the people who are interested in, using it as like an idea generator for spitting out MIDI, those people can save $300 and buy a Q-Chord. So it's cool that it's coming out. It's cool that Suzuki is making it. It's cool that they see that, people like this old thing that has so much cool character, but I think it's too much. It's more than either of the groups of people I could see being interested in this. Speaking of rumors, there has been a leak of the MPC Key 37, which, let's just get this out of the way. I think it looks hilarious. It looks like somebody took a 37 key keybed and an MPC 1 into Photoshop, cropped out every element, and then dragged it around until they all fit into a rectangle. Something about the dimensions, make it look like a mock-up. And the red is so gaudy. But that being said, I would 100% use it. I use my MPC Live 2 to sequence all sorts of external stuff. I like playing on a keybed. That's my preferred way of controlling synthesizers. That's what I'm used to. It just is kind of ugly. If they made it in the retro gray, I'd buy it already. But I like the size better than the 61 key version, only if they make them not in red. will I consider making the switch. But not that surprising, especially because of the naming of the MPC keys. 61 implies other numbers. Anyway, okay, we're moving fast. A quick one here. Wurlitzer had this Instagram post, which I couldn't believe this was actually the official Wurlitzer account, but it really seems like it is. But it just says soon, and they say new Wurlitzer e-piano coming soon. So to me, that means new hardware, which is awesome. Not a plug-in or anything. A modern Wurlitzer is really, really exciting. If I had to guess, they saw the new production Rhodes doing so well and being so exciting for so many people that they're basing this off of that. Those two things, those two pianos are always mentioned in the same breath. The people who own the name, whoever it is now, probably said, can't we do the same thing? Or don't people have the same excitement for Wurlitzer? And I think they do. So I hope it's a better relative deal than the new Rhodes. To me, the new Rhodes is so expensive, anybody in their right mind would buy either the vintage vibe piano or a fixed old Rhodes, the new one. Hopefully this is not that same. Realistically, it will be, big budget only. So it's a bit of a wash. Cool announcement, but not something I'll ever try. Okay, what have we got next? How about a wacky new guitar pedal design? This is the Gamechanger Audio Mod series. They did the motor synth, you've seen it, the plasma pedal, the plasma voice, the spring reverb pedal that works off of light, all of those new interesting ideas. And this isn't and these at first glance are like, they're just pedals with modulation. But I do think it is like kind of fundamentally a new way to approach this sort of a format. So right now it's just a chorus, a delay, and a reverb. And each of them has modulation inputs for every parameter that are attenuated just based on looking at the panel. And the really, really cool thing has built-in mod sources for pitch and dynamics. So the level and the frequency, I guess, of the audio you're sending through it can affect any of the parameters. So like the delay time gets longer as you play louder, or higher notes increase the rate of the modulation on your vibrato or your chorus. That sort of flexibility that I'm used to from synthesizer patch bays or Eurorack in something that's doing it to audio, applying it to audio. I think that's really, really clever. I think it's really, really exciting in standalone pedals like this. I would love to try it with stuff that normally doesn't, afford you that level of expression. Electric pianos, other acoustic instruments. I think for me, really, I'm thinking of electric pianos. But the idea of this instrument becoming more expressive and having control over that is really, really cool. So I'd love to try those. Gamechanger, hit me up. Okay, still moving fast. We've seen a little bit of this. This is the PWM Mantis. It is described here on the webpage as a dual filter, dual phonic hybrid analog synthesizer. Designed primarily by the late Chris Huggett, may he rest in peace. He designed the Wasp and the Oscar, worked for Novation a long time. He's responsible for the base station, all sorts of other stuff. This synth is his last design. He passed away. And this, as far as I understand it, is one of the last things he did a lot of work on. But what is the Mantis? The Mantis has digital oscillators, dual analog filters, but analog everything else too. So there's definitely some connection to the Wasp and the Oscar. They had digital oscillators. And really the only thing I know about the Oscar, it has the dual filter sort of formant vowel-y thing. And this definitely takes some inspiration from that. Only am noticing it now that I look at this picture here. It's full-size keys when the Malevolent was smaller. So bigger, I think it is more expensive, but a really, really cool entry from PWM. I really appreciate what they're doing. But I like this idea of circuits with provenance, designs with history brought together in a new package, a modern package, and that brings us neatly to the Vanilla Synthesizer. My good friend Suit and Tie Guy, operating now the world's oldest synthesizer company, Musonics. This is the Vanilla Synthesizer, American format or Moog format system, a complete synthesizer. It owes a lot to the Oberheim 2-voice, like the filter and the mixer, I think, are specifically from that, but incorporates some designs from other places. Oscillators designed by Gene Stopp, the MS-20's LFO, but it has plenty of its own choices, some that just come from, these circuits, these modules being implemented as 5U, as modules. I heard this at KnobCon. It sounds fantastic. A lot of the people who have heard it from NAMM also, I think, were pretty impressed by it. I personally cannot wait to get my hands on it. Okay, moving forward, the last sort of bunch of these, Korg announced a ton of new stuff. First, the Korg Neo. It's kind of a reissue. The original Korg, I think, was like 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. The original Korg was this big virtual analog when virtual analog was really, really in. I associated a lot with the Studio Logic Sledge, but the main draw from the old one, it was a bunch of vintage filter models, a bunch of modeled over legendary synthesizers filter models. I don't think any other element of it is necessarily based on something vintage, just the filter models, which is cool. It's a cool way to get a bunch of classic sounds. That's sort of, when people talk about the Prophet sound, the Oberheim sound, ARP this, ARP that, it is coming down. A lot of the time it comes down to the character of the filter. And those are modeled in the old King Korg and now here in the Neo. 10 years ago or 15 years ago, whatever it was, having emulations of a bunch of classic filters, I think is a little bit ahead of the curve. Bringing it back now makes a lot of sense. I think people are more aware of classic synthesizers than they were 10 years ago. I think more people will recognize, these classic filter models than they would have 10 or 15 years ago. There's one slight, miss, I guess. The original King Korg Neo has a tube saturation circuit at the end, and that's not here. Of course, you're going to say, we don't use vacuum tubes for hardly anything anymore, but Korg has the new tubes. They put new tubes in Vox pedals. It's in the nub ass, the Volca nub ass. Korg has these tiny modern production lower voltage tubes, and it seems like it would really, really be perfect to put in this. So why it's missing, I do not know. This almost looks like it's the same format as the OpSix, the Mod Wave, and the Wave State, but I think it is different. There's enough small differences that I really don't think it is the same one. But anyway, those are just kind of weird things. That was too long. I think the King Korg Neo is cool. I'd like to try it and talk about it from the perspective of here's hardware that has filter models of all these old things. We've seen all sorts of reissues. People want that, and I think that amount of flexibility makes this pretty interesting to a lot of people. That was way, way too long. There are now desktop or rack mount versions of the OpSix, the Mod Wave, and the Wave State. This has been kind of clear since they came out that this was something they were thinking of. The design of the cases that have the keyboard in them make it clear that you can pull that top out and stick it in just a module rack. But I don't think it's that exciting. Also, just to point out, on this Sweetwater page, this says OpSix Mk2 module. The image looks like it's just the OpSix. So I don't know if the module is or isn't the Mark II, but I guess we'll talk about that. The OpSix Mk2, which I definitely thought I had pulled up. The OpSix Mk2 is pretty much the same as the original OpSix. They highlight for some reason that it has new LEDs underneath the operator control section, and it has twice as many voices. But I don't think the reason people weren't buying the original OpSix was the voice count, because it was already at, I think, 32 maximum. And if you use the high definition waves, it's 24. So presumably now 64, I know that, but it goes down to 48. I don't think people were avoiding the OpSix because it didn't have voices. And even, this is something else I was going to mention, I didn't know it would be so easy for me to find an image of it. You can see here, it looks like they just stuck a sticker over the old panel. And they didn't even add aftertouch to the keyboard, one of the biggest omissions of the first release of the OpSix. So it'll respond to aftertouch. And I think after the 2.0 hardware, it'll respond to polyphonic aftertouch, but that's not included in the keyboard it has. So this new hardware iteration of the OpSix, if you really, really need 64 voices, cool, then I understand why you want it. But, I think the OpSix is great. I have the original. I bought it at almost full price. But respectfully, this feels like Korg trying to move product that isn't moving. It feels like them trying to sell, even if they made too many faceplates, you know what I mean? Or they have these bottom chassis for it. It feels like Korg is trying to move product that they couldn't figure out how to move. We also have, which I just gave up, I guess, on my spreadsheets here. Something that is just exciting. We have, I can't believe I didn't close that. We have a new version of the MicroKorg. They've always said it's the best-selling synthesizer of all time. I believe them. I've owned 3. I've kept one. I don't know why I'm pointing over there. You cannot see it. But a modern follow-up to the MicroKorg is cool. On the website, they don't call it 2. I've seen everybody else call it 2, MicroKorg 2. We're ignoring the XL, sorry, which I think was all right. But it's a totally new engine, 8-voice virtual analog, has 3 oscillators instead of 2. There's still a vocoder. Harmonizer is a new word. Looper is a new word on the panel. Instead of the parameter text matrix, we have, the very modern, you have 5 knobs that correspond to 5 parameters on the panel. Very OP1, very Electron. I cannot believe that they kept the genre knob. Just let these be letters. Nobody is remembering, funk soul 4. That's what I was looking for. Or nobody's saying, I'm looking for a sound, something for funk or soul. Those sounds are just going to Anyway, name them by functionally what they are: pads, bass, leads, arps, or leave these program banks or categories, whatever, as just letters. Regardless, I think it's cool that Korg's putting it out. I think they're right to put it out. I really, really want to try one. I don't think we know the price yet. If we do, I missed it. That sort of determines if this is a modern classic again or not. To me, this is mostly just pressure to make my MicroKorg. It was always great video, which actually I'll probably have to move way up in the list before it gets drowned out by MicroKorg 2 videos. Very, very cool addition. Very, very anxious to try it. One last thing, the motherfucking big dog, the Korg PS3300. Crazy, crazy cool reissue for them to do. Not something that I think a lot of people know very, very well. My buddy Roland is giddy about this, I know for sure. I'm more familiar with the 3100, but the 3300 was like really, really limited. I'm pretty sure there were less than, I can't remember, 50. I'll put the real number up. Alex Ball is going to scold me for not remembering it. But it's this full-size reissue of a truly legendary synth. On the 3300, the reissue here, we can see it's divided into these 3 sections. And each of these is pretty much, this is a pretty low resolution image, each of these is pretty much the 3100, which has an oscillator, its own envelope, a filter, this sort of like band pass resonator, I believe it's called. It has its own modulation, it has its own LFO. It is a complete synthesizer voice, okay? And you have that 3 times for every voice of polyphony. And it has fully 49 key polyphonic voice architecture. Every key is its own voice. Every voice is 3 of these modules, 3 of these complete, oscillator, filter, envelope modulation, synth voices, synth architectures. That's ludicrous. And I know it adds voice memory, patch memory. I think that was just on the 3200. And you have a sort of like mixing section to blend these 3 voices together. And of course, some stuff related to control. It's crazy. It's ludicrous. It's like more analog, happening than any other piece of hardware I can think of. But totally, this is like built to order, more than 10 grand, It's not going to be everywhere. It's cool that they're doing it. The FS might imply that they'll do a mini. They have done things named FS that never got a mini, like the MicroKorg 700. But I'm holding out hope. Even if they just did the 3100, even if they did the 3100 full size, and it was like a reasonable amount of money, a couple grand instead of this behemoth. I think that would be so exciting. Or a 3100 mini. Anything we can do to get these flavors of 70s Korg polyphony into the hands of more people would be very, very cool. Super, super cool. Kind of unobtainium, like the Moog modular reissues. But just to see that, this is how I'll end, just to see that the synth market is in a place where a reissue like this is not only something Korg has talked about, but decided to go through with and sell. We're in a really, really cool place for hardware, for synthesizers. We're excited about stuff that gives us really, really cool products. But looking at all the stuff I brought up, everybody else knows what's exciting about synthesizer history and, what elements of it are worth continuing to try. And all I'm trying to say is it's probably the best time to be into synthesizers. There's so much available to us. There's so much new, exciting stuff coming out. And I'm really thrilled to be a part of it at this time. But that's it. If I forgot anything, let me know and we'll chat about it in the comments. Actually, I think there's going to be a lot of things to chat about in the comments. That's all I got. Some of this stuff I can't wait to try. A lot of it I'll never touch. But that's all I got to say. Hope your new year's starting off good. My name's Jorb. I love gear. Thanks for watching. Cheers and so long.